Coming up next, let's welcome Seth S. Smith to the stage. Seth is a senior game designer on Valorant's social and player dynamics team. Seth's got 12 years of experience under his belt, having worked on titles like Jurassic Park, Jaws, Fast and Furious, and more. So without further ado, let's welcome Seth to the stage. And if you're up for it, can we see some shark emojis?
Hi, this is Understanding Player Dynamics, the untapped potential of positive play. Questions that need answers. What are player dynamics and who am I? Let's start with the easier one. I'm Seth S. Smith, and I'm a senior player dynamics designer on VALORANT. Some of the companies that I've worked at are NBC Universal, and of course, like Riot Games. How it started. I've always wanted to be a game designer since I was 5. I used to spend my childhood just drawing in notebooks, coming up with like paper prototypes for board games. Also, making my own Pokemon cards when I couldn't afford to get, buy more. I'd end up coming up with my own designs for that. And my friends would come over and say, hey, I kind of like your version of Pikachu, a little better. So that kind of inspired me to say, hey, is it possible for me to do this for a living? I went to Savannah College of Art and Design and studied interactive design and game development and graduated and worked on a game development portfolio to start applying for jobs. After graduation, after sending out numerous application and intro emails, I was able to start working in the game industry. And I've been working for about 10 plus years. I've worked on hidden object games, free-to-play RPGs, AR location-based games, casino games, and of course, tactical shooters. I think the thing that's like really connected all those variety of different games is really the need for positive play. I got to work on a variety of different games with a variety of different audiences that behave differently and are motivated by different things. And that allowed me to see at least the baseline of what people desire when they're playing a game and when they're engaging in a game community. What is positive play? Positive play is healthy player-to-player interactions and game experiences. And game developers who are tasked with maintaining and incentivizing positive play work in, you guessed it, player dynamics. So, what are player dynamics? Well, player dynamics isn't just people banning or issuing interventions to stop players from disrupting the game. Player dynamics is actually all of the systems, features, messaging tied around incentivizing healthy, positive playing experiences with others. It's just making sure we have healthy player-to-player interaction and encouraging pro-social or good behavior, healthy behavior as well. The official textbook definition is the craft of helping people play well together in games and social systems. As well as designing for multiple minds, being mindful that there's more than one motivation that brings people into this game community. Some people may be here to play, to compete. Some people may be here to connect with others. There's a variety of different people that enter a game community and being mindful of that. And at Riot Games, player dynamics is a subdiscipline of design like game design and UX. So what do I do in my day-to-day? As a designer, I brainstorm concepts to help facilitate player dynamics. I write design docs, and I help articulate the player dynamics design vision. Player dynamics is social dynamics, and those things can be broken up into 2 categories. Team dynamics, which is related to stuff that happens at the product or game level. Player participation, making sure that players are playing with integrity, as in they're not cheating or disrupting or violating any of the rules, as well as like creating systems to ensure that players communicate to each other respectfully. And then we have outside of the game, we have the community, and that could be people who are, watching a Twitch stream or people who facilitate tournaments and, IRL, or, digitally. And that could also be how people engage with the game in outside of like competing in events or in like playing the actual game, but maybe just in the community. Maybe they create memes or they create content to teach people how to engage and play Valorant at a different level, or any game at a different level. That's understanding your community, and we want to make sure that there's healthy behavior both in game and out of game when we're designing for player dynamics. Player dynamics covers a wide space. We've already talked about integrity of play, how players communicate, players having a sense of safety, as well as how they connect with each other socially. There's so much depth and so much room to explore here. We're now just starting to scratch the surface. In traditional sports, integrity play looks like, a ref making a call on the field when somebody violates a rule. Communication could be a team huddling up. Safety is any mechanisms or professionals or guidelines, policies that we have to ensure players are healthy and protected. And social bonds is often the roles associated with teamwork. Like in this example, as you're running, the runner at the front is usually the pace setter, and the runner at the back is the sweeper to make sure no one gets left behind. Those are social roles in that group. In Valorant, its integrity of play looks like our ability to detect disruptive behavior. Communication is players engaging with each other via chat. Safety is, again, any policies that we have to mitigate disruptive behavior, and our standards for how players should engage with each other. And social bonds is your ability to add friends and play together with others. But any player-to-player interaction involves player dynamics. Any aspect of this. So where does player dynamics design fit into game development? Well, I've always said if designing a game was like creating a house, then the designer is the architect who's creating the blueprints of that house. Establishing what different spaces are used for, how people can navigate through different spaces, and what does the space need to realize its particular goal. Constructing that house, that lives on the engineering side. So that's programming and that's coding to develop the actual structure that represents a design. And then in terms of giving that space, that interaction, that those mechanics a visual presence, and visual or audio feedback, that is what the artist or interior designer would do. So what's the blueprint for positive play? Well, it involves setting the stage for player-to-player interaction. There's many games that will attract different audiences and set up different expectations for players just based off of the rules that you have to engage. These are things that you see in many games that are house rules or changing the configuration for various modes that could lead to either something that's more competitive or more accessible in nature based off of how you set the parameters. So you want to be very clear about what each mode and what each aspect of the interaction is attracting in terms of your audience. And are they prepared to understand how to best optimally play in that space, in that environment? It's maintaining an open conversation with our players, constantly listening to how they're responding to the stages that we set and the experiences that we create, and learning from them and responding and making them feel heard with our developments and as we continue to progress to meet their needs. But you always want that to be an open dialogue. And then it's identifying what is optimal positive behaviors versus disruptive behaviors. And then once you've identified that and in that open dialogue, communicated that with your community and established parameters to help ensure that, it's tuning and tweaking those parameters to make sure you encourage healthy behavior and de-incentivize disruptive behavior. So why do we design for player dynamics? Well, let's say you have this amazing design that you created, and it's going to attract a bunch of different people. And those individuals represented by these shapes, these triangles, circles, etc., are going to be attracted to that design for very different reasons. And they may also come with very different motivations and intentions. Some may be healthy, some may be very pro-social, and others may be more disruptive. And the thing is, when you have like different people attracted to your game, it's up to you, in order to protect our players, to establish which behaviors you want to see more of. So how do we do that? Well, it's considering that we understand that different players are coming to the game for different aspects, and they have different motivations. So figuring out which of your players are these experiences actually tailored for. So, these are your Bartle types. You have in the top left your competitor. In the top right, you have your explorer. In the bottom left, you have your socializer. And in the bottom right, you have your achiever. Now, games often have way more types of players than this, but the Bartle system is just like a general foundation to start understanding and looking at your audience as different groups of players within your overall community. Once you understand that you have different groups of players, you have to understand that each of them will also have distinct needs. And this is, a hierarchy of needs, but understanding that players have, or just all people have physiological needs, have a need for safety, for love and belonging, for esteem and respect, and then for self-actualization to actually become like who they are. So how does your game help facilitate that? How does your game help allow your different groups to reach and meet their needs in their social ecosystem? That can start by establishing player dynamics pillars. And each game will have different pillars that you establish. Each mode may even have different pillars. But for example, let's say we're creating a game and some of our player dynamics pillars where we want to definitely ensure safety. We want to ensure that play is balanced so it can be fair and competitive. But we also want success to come about through working together, through teamwork and cooperation. So we want that to be a pillar as well. Once you establish those pillars, the next step is to then figure out design executions that can come from those pillars. So an aspect of safety could be player moderation, giving players the ability to help communicate what they want to see more of or less of in the experience. Another aspect could be for balanced play is like active participation, making sure that like matches are fair because players are all actively participating. And then another aspect of another design aspect that can come from the pillar of cooperation is teamwork. How do we incentivize like teamwork? So once you have, again, those pillars, and then you have those, what we call design areas, you can then, of like player moderation, active participation, teamwork, you can then come up with features or, systems that can allow you to um, encourage and incentivize those pillars. So under the design area of player moderation, empowering players to be able to report disruptive behavior or pro-social behavior when they encounter it. For balanced play, under active participation, we can develop a system to detect when players are AFK to ensure that teams are always balanced. And then to incentivize teamwork, we could have distinct roles into our character design so that some characters may have strengths and weaknesses, and success is found by having synergy between different types of roles, cooperating, working together as a team. So, that's how you can start to realize those pillars. Under player reports, are players able to report disruptive behavior when they see it? Are they able to give some form of kudos or props when they see good behavior? Are players also able to report when players are AFKing? Do we also have another system to detect AFKing that doesn't rely on player moderation? And then for distinct roles, like do players understand like, hey, if I play this role, I can help create opportunities for this role and vice versa. So once you have those pillars out, and then you have those design areas, and in those design areas, you've explored your features, you then have another layer of your types of players. And generally on the opposite ends of the spectrums, you'll have role model players, which will do behaviors and interactions that embody all of your pillars. And then you'll have disruptive players, which will do interactions that oppose or don't embody any of your pillars. Your conceit is now that you have players that are embodying this, your pillars, but if you get to a point to where you have more disruptive players and you have players who are role model, what will happen is the game space will become dominated by those kinds of players. And that might cause your role model players to no longer feel like they belong in that community. So player dynamics is coming up with policies and rules and systems that create this a road into the community space. And we want to create a very frictionless road for players who embody our pillars. And then we want to gracefully exit players who do not embody our pillars, or even worse, who are committed to disrupting people who embody our pillars and disrupting the experience as a whole. And now once you apply those type of policies and systems to your design, you're then able to continually track players who are engaged in, for example, these pillars for this where, safety, um, you know, um, cooperation, and balanced play. You're able to attract players who are engaged in those aspects, and then create features that gracefully exit players who are unwilling to embody role model behavior. And the key overall is to lead to reform. So with having systems that may mute players or give players feedback that they are not in line with that their behavior is not in line with the pillars, hopefully that over time gives them the ability to take a step back, think about how they're interacting in the space, and adopt better practices to help them align with the pillars, and then they will gracefully enter back into the community. So ultimately, the goal is that through player dynamics, we can reform players who have been disruptive by educating them on what are the pillars of the space, what are the value of participating in role model behavior, and why this actually makes the game safer and healthier for us all, and lead them to a path of reform. We don't celebrate banning or intervening against players. Rather, we want to help players reform and participate positively so that everyone can just have fun together. With player dynamics, we have this new opportunity to practice more empathy and social consciousness than traditional sports or any games that have been designed without player dynamics in mind. And our aim, just as an industry, should be to create safe and positive, diverse, equitable, and inclusive gaming culture moving forward. If we look at when a lot of these organizations were established, we can understand that sometimes disruptive behavioral patterns, the longer they've been in a community, the harder it is to change. But the next game that will be made by future developers, isn't out yet. And if they keep in mind player dynamics principles, they can ultimately start attracting an audience in gaming that is receptive to change, is receptive to creating safe spaces for everyone, is receptive to positivity. And that is just overall a better world state where people can feel safe playing games together, where they can make friends with people, where they can express themselves, where they can feel like they belong in a community. And that is the untapped potential of positive play.
Thank you, Seth, for that awesome talk. If y'all liked anything that Seth had to say, please share it out. Tweet it out, user hashtag gdocExpo, and show Seth and the event some love.